Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So tonight we're going to go over a Laurence Fox interview. I do understand that some of you will be thinking he's controlled opposition, but we're going to be mentioning this more in principle, as opposed to the particular gentleman in and of himself. However, although he's faux right, if he's even right-wing at all, seeing as he does describe himself as a lefty, I think it's a fair point to go that if you're going for accelerationism, then he is not your man. If you're thinking that things can still be tilted the other way, then he is your man, because he's not too far removed from the Overton window that he would be castigated, but of course he's not quite where we want him to be. So supporting him is the idea that things can still be saved. Almost white-pilled, but of course it's not saying that things are okay as they are, just that things can be rectified before they get too bad. So I suppose he's one of the saving graces, if you will. Similar to how Trump was in 2016 going into 2020, but that wasn't appreciated. He is, as in Laurence Fox, is a similar chap for now and going into 2024. Obviously, he's significantly further left than Trump, but he's one of those options in order to try and swing the pendulum back to some sense of normality, in order to then, of course, push it further right. But nonetheless, that is towards freedom. You'll also find that this will go more into Stefan Molyneux defence. Not that, of course, he needs defence from a lowly channel such as mine, but nonetheless, the principles that he mentions, I think, are worth extrapolating and commenting on. With all that said and done, let's get into it. So, from the Mail Online, the tyranny of the woke mob has made me realise how the Nazis came to power. Laurence Fox was born into acting royalty, but lost his girlfriend, briefly, career, and friends after an explosive row on Question Time. Kind of, it was more how he got into politics afterwards. Here he tells why he won't be silenced. Key takeaways, if you wish to click off now, is that how the Nazis came to power is from the culture being subverted by the powers that be, as subversive as they might be. So the left, again, as the National Socialists were, but yes, trying to censor language so that some ideas can't be mentioned. Lost his girlfriend because she was getting a lot of hate and she couldn't hack it, and wanted some time out of the spotlight because they were going after her, even though it was him that had decided to draw the ire towards himself. And why he won't be silenced is because what he's doing now is more important than his acting and being on stage, despite that being meaningful to him. So long story short, there you go. But how's about we get into some details? So, with regards to this, I think that the key takeaway is that anybody can say anything that they want in a free society, in an ideal world. You're more than welcome to say anything that you want, and I'm a free speech extremist in that regard. Yep, even incitement to violence, I would say, yeah, it's words. It's down to the people that are there in order to follow or not follow. I do understand the idea that there are supposed to be exceptions made and acceptance of people who aren't a full ticket and therefore can be swayed more readily than other people, and therefore you should change your society in order to cater for them as well. But I do not support that argument. I do think we should be brought down to the common denominator. That is essentially the start of the slippery slope. Therefore, I am a free speech extremist. Not threats, per se, but obviously this all still needs work, and it is a work in progress. So, everybody's responsible for their own actions. Cool, job done. What this means, however, is that being complicit is actually quite a vital role. We know the old quote, you know, that when they came for the blacks, I didn't shout out because I wasn't black. When they came for the gypsies, didn't shout out because I wasn't gypsy. When they came for the Jews, didn't shout out because I wasn't gypsy. When they came for me, nobody shouted out because there was nobody left. Yep, cool. We know all that. But I think the key takeaway there, that might be overlooked, but might be obvious to some, is that leaders are needed in almost every facet of life. That you might not think of yourself as a leader, but that might actually be what makes you a good leader. Because that means you're not going for power, you're going for principles, and that is vital. So you need to know your morality and your philosophy to the minute detail, to the exact point of where something is crossing a line, because other people won't. And this isn't a sense of social responsibility. It is simply an understanding of mob mentality. What that means is that if something is going along, like the woke brigade, for example, and unconscious bias training comes into your workplace, there will be a lot of people who don't support it, but think that, oh, well, I suppose this is just the done thing and I have to go along with it. So if you're the one to stand up and say, yeah, but no, there's no scientific grounding for this and I don't wish to participate, and I'd encourage other people to not either, and you can of course go down that whole tirade, as I'm sure you guys are well informed as well, then other people will be very grateful for that, appreciate what you're saying, and the buck stops there. It stops right with you. You will stop the trend in its tracks because you are not enabling it to gain traction. And you are helping out a load of people in doing so. Not only the people that then don't have to go through the forced unconscious bias training, but also the people that they're trying to protect against. I understand that we're not racist or sexist or any of those bad isms, and instead we view people as individuals. But unconscious bias training, what that does is makes people aware of these unalienable characteristics and differences between people, like race and sex, and therefore makes them feel like they're treading on eggshells. And that is the key negative from unconscious bias training. It doesn't actually do what it sets out to do. In fact, it does precisely the opposite, and therefore in a paradoxical turn of events makes things worse in the exact way that they were trying to help. So you're good for standing up against it. And that's his point about how the Nazis came to power, that people just went with it. It was kind of the bystander effect. And therefore it is down to you, even though you may not feel like a leader, if you know where your line in the sand is drawn, then you know when to stand up and say something. And it's also what differentiates yourself from a Karen, because you're not calling out anything at the slightest possibility, but instead it's well thought through and reasoned, and you will stay quiet until things get to that point, and then you'll be able to unload your barrage and say, no, I'm okay up to this point, and we can do as we have been doing. Your sense of progressiveness is acceptable. But at this point, this is where I draw a line in the sand and I have a problem with, for the following reasons, and you can lay it out very clearly and concisely. That is the difference. That is what the difference between, can I speak to the manager please, and someone saying, no, this is entirely unacceptable, based on these points. Just so you know, they are not one and the same, and that is why. And universal principles, that is precisely something that needs to be focused on. It really is. Because too often it's like saying, oh, well, you're just being the thing that you're against. Like, you're just being hypocritical, because, yeah, you're against Karens, but you're being a Karen now. And you can say, well, no. And it is for the following reasons. But by all means, we can have this discussion. And that leads me on to another point. A very, very, very important point, which ties into what Stefan Molyneux says about voluntary association, which he would then lead on to anarchism, insofar as what Laurence Fox is doing here. That somebody can have a successful career or a successful path in doing whatever it is that they wish to do. In this instance, it is, of course, acting. Then if they decide they have a calling outside of that which is more important and pursue that, they're not forcing people to follow them, but are instead saying what they believe and encouraging people to join in. But people don't have to. This is not like union membership or things like that. No. This is voluntary association. So somebody can take that risk, like Laurence Fox, and say, okay, cool. I understand that my acting career is basically over now. Gone. Fine. But what I'm doing now is more important. Of course, he's fortunate enough to get, 5 million quid funding from one lovely investor. He's worth 375 on his own, but nevertheless, that he got that till the next election, probably in 2024, depending on how things go. But the point is, he's now on borrowed time. There is a clear end point for his income, his career. Instead of before, he could just work till older age, like Angela Lansbury, who's, bloody hell, doing it so long, still acting in her 90s, still on stage. So there doesn't have to be a clear endpoint. But maybe people don't support him, in which case he screwed himself over. And that's fine. that is completely fine. I think a vital thing that is missing from people who are going with capitalism idea and free marketplace of ideas is that you can actually combine the two. That Laurence Fox's livelihood is running on his ideas, which can be, at the moment, controversial, but nonetheless, that is what he's decided to do. And he's not forcing other people to go along with it. Not saying that you have to support me because this is now the policy, this is now politics, and this is an established party, like the other parties, Tories and Labour in particular, do, and Lib Dems and Greens less so. But still, they do. No, instead he's saying, oh, I'm on my own. I'm independent, essentially. It's the Reclaim Party, so it's not called the Laurence Fox Party anymore. And if you wish, there's a lovely little photo shoot that he's decided to participate in. There you go. Free London, as he's going for London Mayor against Sadiq Khan. Best of luck to him. He claims to have a third of London in support. We'll see how it goes. Bear in mind that Sadiq Khan was voted in almost entirely for demographics, and we're not going to get those results in until spring next year when this year's census results come out. But, you know, maybe better luck next time. But the point is this, that he can choose to go for whatever political party that he wishes to do so. And he may have support, or he may not have support. And that is the beauty of it. That is the beauty of freedom of speech, and that is actually what he's fighting for. That the crazy thing is, when people are going for freedom, is that they are not actually looking to enrich themselves or seek power, if they're being honest. And I'm exactly the same. If I was in power, of course, there wouldn't be a social state in any way. So there's no way I could enrich myself, because there wouldn't be taxes to support me, and that's the way I view it as freedom. So he is being subversive to the mainstream narrative at the moment, and if he's honest and all for freedom of speech, then of course he is encouraging other people to take him out, so that he loses his position and can't stay in power. That is what he is encouraging. And the lovely thing about freedom of speech and freedom of association, instead of forcing people to abide by your rules and laws, is that you can say whatever you want, but you don't get to do whatever you want with regards to forcing other people to do things. And to me, that is beautiful. That you can be as radical as you want. You can say whatever you want and try and garner support for whatever cause you want. But it doesn't mean you're going to get it. And that is magnificent. That is perfect. You actually have to persuade people. You actually have to lay out facts and figures and statistics and use rhetoric as much as you use logic as it happens. But that is what you have to do. You don't just get to force people to do things. So it's almost like, if he's wrong, he's still right, and if he's right, he's still wrong. And that's the crazy thing. And the same goes for anarchists, like Stefan Molyneux, of course. They go, well, our point is, you should be free to do whatever you want, and free to form associations with anyone you want, in any way that you and the consenting parties find agreeable. It's like, okay, that sounds lovely and idyllic, but what if you're wrong? So, okay, what if I'm wrong? So you've taken personal responsibility for all your actions. You can do whatever you want, provided you can get people on board. Right, cool. So if I'm wrong, then nothing happens. And that's it. Because I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm not forcing you to say something or forcing you to not say something. Whereas, if somebody who enacts an actual positive policy, if you will, instead of a passive, it's more of an aggressive policy. I say you have to do something, then if they're wrong, then there can be terrible consequences. Like, of course, in Ukraine under Stalin, as a classic example. Then yes, this kind of thing can happen as a consequence. And sure, you might have a lack of food under an anarchistic or anarchic society, but the only fault or the only blame lies in those individuals who maybe had bad weather, a bad season by all means, and they failed to prepare, and maybe it was impossible to prepare. But nonetheless, nobody forced them to be in that position. And that's the point. So if he is as honest as he claims to be, that even if he wins, nobody loses. Because he's not forcing anybody to do anything. And personally, I think that is where the right, even though he doesn't regard himself as a right wing, I know, that is where they really lose ground. A lot. Because they go for the personal responsibility path without showing the freedom path enough. And I don't just mean saying freedom. I mean actually understanding what it means. Understanding what people feel that they need, and for their needs to be fulfilled, and going after it in that way. So I don't just mean, oh, you're free to do anything, because to a lot of people, that is quite abstract. Right. What I mean instead is that you can form an agreement with somebody, like your neighbour or someone. You can work for them, you can do some work for them, you can help them out, and they will return the favour by doing something for you, and that's perfectly acceptable. You can do whatever you want. You can then find that you actually specialise in something and you're quite good at that, and then you can help out your village, your little local street, your neighbourhood, whatever it might be. And you can form relationships with them, and you can be the person, the pillar of the community, that is good at fixing roofs, for example. And you can do that, and you're helping other people. And that's fantastic, and they wish to reward you for that because you're doing well. Brilliant. And then you can push it further afield because you've got a novel way of doing things. And you're making those voluntary associations the whole time. And people like what you're doing. Why does anybody else have any right to suddenly come in and intervene in your relationships to say, oh no, you can't do it that way, or no, we don't like that, you go do it a different way, and at the same time, while we're interfering with your business and your relationships with the people that you know and care for, we're also then going to take out part of what you're being given as a reward. So somebody likes what you've done for them and wants to give you a 6-pack of beer, we're going to take 2 of those beers. Why? And it's that kind of thing that I think really needs to be pursued further. The same as you wish to be able to provide safety and security for your family, and yet some third party intervenes and says, no, you can't do that. No, you can't keep them safe as you wish. You can't actually train and defend yourselves. You can't train your family and your children in how to defend themselves and keep them safe from predators, whether that be human or animal. You're not allowed to do that. It's these kind of things that seem unreasonable at first glance, when put this way, because this is the honest way, that really needs to be pushed further. So, best of luck to Laurence Fox. If he means what he says, I'm in full support. He's better than the alternative if Sadiq can't. So, why not? But please do. Let me know what you guys think down below of Laurence Fox. If you think he's false opposition, then let me know down below and what you think. And even if you do think that he's false opposition, do you think that he's still worthwhile in order to swing the pendulum back? Or instead are you more thinking, now we should go down the accelerationist route and just keep going with Sadiq Khan and, you know, encourage all these policies of illegal cycle lanes and forcing women to cover up in advertisements and closing down local businesses because of lockdown rules and COVID regulations and all that? Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.